There is a dangerous kind of life that does not look dangerous at all. It looks normal. You wake up when the alarm goes off. You get dressed. You go to work. You answer emails. You handle bills. You take care of responsibilities. You come home tired, eat dinner, look at your phone for a while, and tell yourself you will think about your future tomorrow. Then tomorrow comes, and you do it again. Nothing is falling apart. Nothing is dramatically wrong. But somewhere deep inside, you know something is missing. Direction. That feeling usually arrives in quiet moments. Maybe you are sitting in your car after work, engine off, hands still on the steering wheel. Maybe it is Sunday night and you feel a heaviness because another week is about to begin. Maybe you see someone your age doing something they once talked about years ago, and suddenly you remember the dreams you stopped talking about. Not because you stopped caring, because life got busy. That is how people drift. Not through one terrible decision, through thousands of ordinary days without a clear destination. Imagine a man named Marcus. Marcus is 38. He has a decent job at a distribution company outside Dallas. He is reliable, respected, and good at what he does. He has been there for 11 years. When he first started, he told himself it was temporary. He wanted to save money, get experience, and eventually start his own small logistics business. Back then, he talked about it constantly. He would sketch ideas in notebooks. He would watch videos about business after work. He would tell his wife, "Give me a few years. I'm going to build something of my own." But a few years became 5. 5 became 8. Then 11. And the dream slowly changed from a plan into a sentence he used to describe his younger self. "I used to want my own company." One Tuesday evening, Marcus gets home later than usual. His son is sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. The assignment is simple. Write down what you want to be when you grow up. His son looks up and says, "Dad, what did you want to be?" Marcus smiles at first. Then he pauses. He tells him, "I wanted to own a business." His son asks the question without any judgment. "Why didn't you?" Marcus laughs softly and says something about bills, timing, and responsibilities. But later that night, he cannot stop thinking about it. Why didn't you? He lies in bed staring at the ceiling. And for the first time in years, he realizes something uncomfortable. Life did not steal his dream. He stopped scheduling it. He stopped protecting it. He stopped giving it deadlines. He kept saying someday, and someday quietly became 11 years. That is the problem with a dream that has no goal attached to it. A dream can survive forever in your imagination. A goal demands something from you. A dream says, "I would love to do that." A goal asks, "When?" A dream says, "I want more freedom." A goal asks, "What exactly does freedom look like?" A dream says, "I want to make more money." A goal asks, "How much? By when? Through what skill, business, or opportunity?" Clarity changes behavior. Think about the last time you used GPS in an unfamiliar city. Before entering the destination, every street is just another street. But once you enter the address, everything changes. Now one turn matters more than another. Some roads take you closer. Others take you away. You may still hit traffic. You may still miss an exit. The trip may take longer than expected, but you know where you are trying to go. A clear goal does the same thing to your life. It helps you recognize what matters. It tells you which opportunities belong to your future and which distractions simply look attractive. Without that clarity, everything competes for your attention. Someone tells you about a business opportunity, and you chase it. Then you see someone making money in real estate, so you start researching that. Then another person tells you to go back to school. Then you hear about investing. Then content creation. Then a different career. You stay busy exploring possibilities, but you never stay committed long enough to build one. Direction removes some of that noise. The next morning, Marcus does something he has not done in years. He gets up 30 minutes early. He sits at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a blank notebook. At the top of the page, he writes, "What do I want my life to look like 3 years from now?" At first, nothing comes. That surprises him. He has spent so much time handling what other people need that he has almost forgotten how to answer what he wants. So he sits there, and slowly, he begins writing. He wants to build enough savings to give himself options. He wants to learn the business side of logistics, not just the operational side. He wants more control over his schedule. He wants to stop telling his son about dreams he never attempted. Then he writes one sentence and circles it. "Within 3 years, I will be in a position to launch my own logistics company." For the first time in 11 years, the dream has a date attached to it. Marcus does not suddenly become successful that morning. He does not quit his job. He does not have investors waiting. He does not even know exactly how he will make it happen. But something important has changed. Yesterday, his future was vague. Today, it has a direction. And once your future has a direction, you can finally begin asking the question that changes everything. What must I start doing now to become the person who can actually reach it? That question follows Marcus all day. What must I start doing now to become the person who can actually reach it? Not, what do I hope happens? Not, what would be nice? What must change? That evening, Marcus opens the notebook again. He writes down everything he believes a business owner would need to know. Money, sales, hiring, customer service, pricing, contracts, taxes, leadership, risk. Then he stares at the list and feels overwhelmed. This is another reason people avoid setting serious goals. Clarity can be uncomfortable. A vague dream lets you imagine the reward without confronting the work. A real goal introduces you to the distance between where you are and where you want to be. Marcus realizes that after 11 years in logistics, he understands operations extremely well. But he knows almost nothing about running a company. For a moment, that scares him. Then he thinks about something simple. Nobody stands at the bottom of a staircase and complains that they are not already on the 10th step. You climb, one step at a time. So Marcus asks a better question. What is the first thing I need to learn? He decides to start with money. Not because it is exciting. Because businesses do not survive on excitement. They survive on numbers. For the next month, Marcus spends 3 evenings a week learning basic business finance. He studies profit margins, cash flow, operating expenses that he learns the difference between revenue and actual profit. And suddenly he sees business differently. For years, he had looked at company trucks leaving the warehouse and thought, if I owned 10 trucks, I'd be doing great. Now he understands that 10 trucks can also mean 10 payments, 10 insurance bills, 10 maintenance schedules, 10 opportunities for something expensive to break. Knowledge does something important. It removes fantasy. And strangely, that makes the goal stronger. Because now Marcus does not just want a business. He wants to build one intelligently. This is where mature goal setting begins. You stop falling in love only with the outcome. You begin respecting the process. Everybody wants the beautiful result. Few people ask what the result requires. Someone says, I want to lose 50 pounds. Fine. But what does that goal ask you to become? Someone who plans meals when it would be easier to grab fast food. Someone who moves their body when they do not feel like it. Someone who can have one bad day without turning it into a bad month. Someone who understands that health is not one decision. It is hundreds of decisions. Someone else says, I want to earn 6 figures. Good. But what value will you create that makes someone willing to pay you that amount? What skills must you develop? What problems can you solve? What responsibility can you handle? This is the part people often skip. They ask life for bigger rewards while staying committed to the same habits, same skills, same schedule, and same level of discipline. But a new future usually requires a new version of you. Think about an empty glass. If the glass can hold 12 ounces, you cannot pour a gallon into it without increasing its capacity. Goals often work the same way. Sometimes the thing you want is bigger than your current capacity. That does not mean you should lower the goal. It means you must grow. Marcus begins noticing this in himself. He has always considered himself hardworking. But he realizes hard work alone will not build the life he wants. He needs patience. He needs financial discipline. He needs confidence speaking with people he does not know. He needs to become comfortable asking questions. That last one is difficult for him. Marcus hates looking inexperienced. At work, he is the guy people ask for answers. Now he has to become a beginner again. One Saturday morning, he meets a local business owner named Andre at a coffee shop. Andre has owned a small transportation company for 14 years. Marcus arrives with a notebook full of questions. But when they sit down, he almost tries to sound more knowledgeable than he is. Andre notices. He smiles and says, "You don't have to impress me. If you knew everything already, you wouldn't be here." That sentence stays with Marcus. How much time do people waste trying to look ready instead of becoming ready? We pretend to understand. We avoid asking questions. We hide weaknesses. We protect our ego. But ego is expensive when you are trying to grow. A beginner who asks honest questions can improve quickly. A beginner who pretends to be an expert stays a beginner much longer. So Marcus starts asking, what was your biggest mistake? How much money did you save before starting? How did you get your first customer? What nearly put you out of business? What would you do differently if you were starting today? Andre talks for almost 2 hours. Some answers encourage Marcus. Others scare him. Andre tells him about months when cash flow was so tight, he barely paid himself. He talks about hiring the wrong people, customers who paid late, equipment failures, sleepless nights. Marcus leaves the coffee shop quieter than when he arrived. That night, he tells his wife everything. She listens and asks, "Do you still want it?" Marcus thinks for a long moment. Then he says, "Yeah, maybe more now." Because now the goal is no longer a fantasy. It has weight, and goals with weight force you to make choices. A few days later, Marcus opens his bank statement. He looks at subscriptions he barely uses. Meals out, random online purchases, little expenses that seemed harmless because each one was small. Then he thinks about his goal. For the first time, those expenses are not competing against an abstract idea like saving more. They are competing against something specific. His company, his freedom, his 3-year plan. And when your future becomes specific, your present decisions begin to feel different. Marcus starts making cuts. Nothing dramatic, but intentional. He creates a separate savings account and names it Future Business Fund. Every payday, money goes there automatically. At first, the amount feels almost meaningless. But Marcus understands something now. The purpose is not only to build the account. The purpose is to build the habit of becoming someone who funds his future before feeding every temporary desire. And that is when a goal starts becoming powerful. Not when it makes you excited. When it begins changing the way you spend your ordinary Tuesday night. Ordinary Tuesday nights are where Marcus begins to understand the difference between wanting something and building toward it. At first, the changes seem almost too small to matter. He cooks at home instead of ordering takeout. He spends 45 minutes studying instead of watching another episode of a show. He turns down a weekend purchase he would normally make without thinking. Nothing dramatic happens. No one applauds. No one posts a headline saying, "Man changes his life by skipping takeout." But that is exactly how transformation usually begins. Quietly, almost invisibly. The problem is that people often expect important change to feel important every day. It does not. Sometimes progress feels boring. That can be dangerous, because boredom makes people question whether the process is working. Marcus experiences that about 4 months into his plan. The excitement is gone. The notebook is no longer new. The business videos he once watched with energy now sometimes feel like homework. The savings account is growing, but not fast enough to impress him. And one night, after a long shift, he sits in his truck outside the house and thinks. 3 years is a long time. That sentence starts a conversation in his head. Maybe he should slow down. Maybe he should enjoy life more. Maybe he is being too strict. Maybe the business idea was just something he needed to get out of his system. This is the point where many goals die, not during a major crisis, during a quiet loss of emotional intensity. The goal still matters, but it no longer feels exciting enough to overpower comfort. Marcus goes inside, eats dinner, and opens the notebook anyway. Not because he feels motivated, because he has already decided what matters. That is discipline. People often describe discipline as something aggressive. Wake up at 4 a.m. Work harder than everyone. Never take a break. Push until you collapse. But real discipline is often much simpler. It is doing what you already decided to do after the mood that created the decision has disappeared. Marcus studies for 30 minutes that night. Not his best session, not his longest, but he shows up. And that small act matters more than he realizes. Because every time he follows through, he is building trust with himself. Think about what happens when you repeatedly break promises to another person. Eventually, they stop believing you. The same thing can happen inside your own mind. You say, "I'm going to start exercising Monday." Monday comes. You do nothing. Next week, you make the same promise. Again, nothing. Eventually, when you tell yourself you are serious, part of you quietly responds. No, you're not. That is a painful place to live. You stop trusting your own intentions. But trust can be rebuilt. Not with bigger promises. With smaller promises kept consistently. Marcus begins using a simple rule. Never miss the goal twice. If he misses one study night because life gets chaotic, fine. He does not attack himself. He does not say the week is ruined. He simply makes sure he returns the next scheduled day. If he overspends one weekend, he corrects it. If he gets distracted, he resets. That rule prevents one bad decision from becoming a new pattern. Because one missed workout is not the problem. The problem is when the missed workout becomes the reason you stop for 3 months. One bad meal is not the problem. The problem is when you tell yourself, I already messed up, and turn one meal into an entire week. One unproductive day is not the problem. The problem is allowing disappointment to become identity. Marcus starts learning how to recover quickly, and recovery becomes one of the strongest skills in his plan. A few months later, life gives him a bigger test. His wife's car needs an expensive repair. The money has to come from somewhere. Marcus knows exactly where. The future business fund. For a moment, he feels sick. He has spent months watching that number climb. Now a large part of it is about to disappear. The old version of Marcus might have said, "See, this is why saving doesn't work. Something always comes up." But the new version looks at it differently. The savings did work. Without that money, the repair would have gone on a credit card. The fund protected his family. Yes, the business timeline may slow down, but the setback does not erase the skill he built. He knows how to save now. That ability is still there. This distinction matters. Sometimes life will take the result temporarily, but it cannot take the person you became unless you surrender the habits too. A runner can get injured and lose fitness, but they still understand training. A business can fail, but the owner keeps the lessons. A person can lose money and still retain financial discipline. Progress is not always stored in what you own. Sometimes it is stored in who you have become. Marcus rebuilds the account. Slowly, and something surprising happens. The second time feels easier. Not because he earns more, because now he has evidence. He has done it before. Confidence begins changing from hope into memory. He no longer has to ask, "Can I be disciplined?" He has proof. That proof begins affecting other areas of his life. At work, he becomes more intentional. He starts paying attention to problems that managers solve. He watches how contracts are discussed. He notices how supervisors handle difficult employees. He begins treating his current job like a paid classroom instead of a prison. That shift changes everything. The same workplace that once felt like evidence that he was stuck now becomes part of his preparation. And sometimes that is what a strong goal does. It does not immediately change where you are. It changes how you use where you are. Marcus begins realizing that he may already be standing inside opportunities he used to overlook. And that realization leads him to a completely different question. What if the life I want is being built from resources I already have, but have never learned how to see? That question changes the way Marcus sees almost everything. For years, he believed the future he wanted would begin only after something big happened. A promotion, a large amount of money, the perfect opportunity, a lucky break. But now he starts noticing something uncomfortable. He already has resources, not enough to finish the journey, but enough to begin. He has experience. He has relationships. He understands the industry. He has access to people who know things he does not know. He has evenings. He has weekends. He has a phone. He has the ability to learn. He has a job that puts him near the kind of problems businesses get paid to solve. The problem was never that he had nothing. The problem was that he had been looking at what he lacked so often that he stopped seeing what he could use. A lot of people do this. They say, "I would start if I had more money. I would get in shape if I had more time. I would go back to school if my schedule were easier. I would build something if I knew the right people." Sometimes those obstacles are real. But an obstacle and a stopping point are not always the same thing. You may not have everything you need, but ask yourself a better question. What do I have right now that I am underusing? Maybe you have 30 quiet minutes before everyone wakes up. Maybe you know one person who could answer a question that has kept you confused for months. Maybe you already own the equipment you need to begin. Maybe your current job is teaching you skills you have been too frustrated to appreciate. Maybe you cannot invest $1,000, but you can invest 20. Maybe you cannot run 5 miles, but you can walk around the block. The first step rarely looks like the final vision. Marcus begins keeping a new page in his notebook. At the top, he writes, "Resources I already have." At first, the list feels almost silly, but then it starts growing. 11 years of logistics experience, knowledge of warehouse operations, relationships with drivers, understanding of common delivery problems, a good reputation, a reliable work ethic, a supportive wife, a small but growing savings account, a laptop, a few hours each week, one mentor. Then Marcus notices something else. For the first time, his goal does not feel like a distant fantasy. It feels like a puzzle, and puzzles can be worked. That shift matters, because helplessness says, "There is nothing I can do." Responsibility says, what can I do with what I have? Responsibility does not mean pretending circumstances do not matter. It means refusing to hand them total control. A few weeks later, Marcus has lunch with a driver named Kevin who has been working independently for several years. During the conversation, Kevin complains about something Marcus has heard dozens of times before. Small companies struggle to coordinate last-minute deliveries. Schedules change. Drivers cancel. Customers need something moved quickly. Everyone starts making frantic phone calls. Marcus has heard this problem for years, but now he hears it differently. Goals have trained his attention. He asks Kevin, how often does that happen? Kevin laughs. All the time. Marcus spends the rest of lunch asking questions. What do companies usually do? What does it cost them? What do drivers hate about the process? What would make it easier? He goes home thinking about the conversation. A year ago, he would have heard a complaint. Now he hears a possible problem worth solving. That is one of the hidden benefits of having direction. Your brain starts filtering the world differently. Imagine deciding you want to buy a certain kind of truck. Suddenly, you see that truck everywhere. It was always on the road. You simply were not looking for it. Goals work the same way. Once you decide what matters, opportunities connected to that goal become easier to notice. Not because the universe suddenly rearranges itself, because your attention changes. Marcus does not rush out and start a company the next morning. He investigates. He talks to more drivers. He speaks with 2 small business owners. He asks what happens when they need urgent transportation. He starts learning where the pain is. And that teaches him another lesson. A goal should make you curious. If your goal is to start a business, become curious about problems. If your goal is to improve your health, become curious about your habits. If your goal is to earn more, become curious about value. If your goal is to repair a relationship, become curious about what the other person experiences, not only what you feel. Curiosity keeps you from blindly forcing one solution. It helps you understand what is actually happening. That matters because sometimes people become so attached to the picture in their head that they stop listening to reality. Marcus once imagined owning a fleet of trucks immediately. Now he starts wondering whether that should even be the first step. Maybe there is a smaller way to enter the business. Maybe he could begin by coordinating independent drivers. Maybe he could help small companies handle overflow deliveries. Maybe the first version of his dream does not need 10 trucks. Maybe it needs 1 customer. That thought changes the scale of everything. The dream becomes less intimidating. He does not need to build the entire company today. He needs to prove that 1 person will pay him to solve 1 real problem. And that principle applies far beyond business. If you want to write a book, do not stare at 300 blank pages. Write 1 page today. If you want to change careers, do not obsess over the next 10 years. Have 1 conversation with someone already doing the work. If you want financial stability, do not let a huge number paralyze you. Save the first amount you can protect. Big goals often become possible when you stop carrying the entire weight of them at once. Marcus writes another sentence in his notebook. Do not build the whole future today. Build the next piece. Asterisk asterisk. And for the first time, he starts thinking about his goal not as 1 giant leap, but as a series of experiments. 1 conversation, 1 skill, 1 small client, 1 lesson, 1 adjustment. And that is when he becomes ready for something every meaningful goal eventually demands. The courage to test yourself in the real world, where plans can no longer hide from results. Testing yourself in the real world changes everything. Because ideas feel safe when they are still inside your head. In your imagination, the customer says yes. The plan works. The timing is perfect. You stay confident. Nothing goes wrong. Reality is different. Reality gives you feedback. And sometimes that feedback hurts. Marcus learns this the first time he tries to find a paying client. He has spent months studying. He has talked to drivers. He has researched costs. He has created a basic plan. Now he decides it is time to approach a small local business that occasionally needs urgent deliveries. He knows the owner through a friend. For 2 days, Marcus practices what he is going to say. He writes notes, changes the wording, practices again. By the time he walks into the meeting, he believes he is prepared. He explains the service. He explains how he could coordinate reliable drivers when the company has overflow work. He talks about flexibility, speed, communication. The owner listens politely. Then he says, "We're good with what we have right now." That is it. No dramatic rejection. No argument. Just no. Marcus walks back to his truck feeling embarrassed. He had imagined this moment for weeks. Somewhere inside, he expected his preparation to earn him a yes. Instead, the world barely noticed how hard he had worked. He sits behind the steering wheel and feels that old temptation. Maybe this is stupid. Maybe he is not a salesman. Maybe he should stick to what he already knows. But then he remembers Andre. His mentor had told him something during one of their conversations. Your first job is not to avoid rejection. Your first job is to survive enough rejection to learn what works. Marcus takes out his phone and writes down everything he remembers about the meeting. The questions the owner asked. The moments when his explanation felt unclear. The objections. The hesitation. Then Marcus notices something. He had spent most of the meeting talking about himself. His experience. His plan. His service. He had barely asked the owner about the actual problems inside the business. He had prepared a presentation before understanding the person sitting across from him. The rejection begins teaching him. That is the difference between people who grow and people who simply get hurt. Both experience disappointment. One asks, what does this prove about me? The other asks, what can this teach me? Those questions lead to completely different futures. A week later, Marcus meets another potential customer. This time, he does not begin with a pitch. He asks questions. How are urgent deliveries handled now? Where does the process break down? What happens when a regular driver cancels? What does a late delivery cost the company? What frustrates customers? The conversation feels completely different. Marcus listens. He takes notes. At the end, he realizes his original offer would not solve the company's biggest problem anyway. So he adjusts. This is why goals require humility. You may start with a destination, but you cannot assume you know every road that will get you there. Sometimes you have to let reality edit the plan. Think about someone trying to improve their health. They decide they will wake up every morning at 5 o'clock and exercise for an hour. It sounds disciplined. They try it for 2 weeks. But they work late, sleep poorly, and start missing sessions. Now they have 2 choices. They can say, I have no discipline. Or they can study the system. Maybe evening workouts fit their life better. Maybe 40 minutes is more sustainable than 60. Maybe 3 consistent workouts beat 7 ambitious ones that collapse after 10 days. Changing the system is not weakness. It is intelligence. The goal is to improve your health. The goal is not to defend one particular schedule at all costs. Marcus starts applying that principle everywhere. He stops asking, is my original plan working? He starts asking, what is the result trying to tell me? His third conversation goes better. His fourth leads to a referral. The referral leads to a small opportunity. A local furniture business has a delivery issue. One of its regular drivers is unavailable. The owner needs several pieces delivered across town before the end of the day. It is not a huge contract. It is not glamorous, but it is real. Marcus coordinates the driver, confirms the addresses, keeps the business owner updated, handles a last-minute timing change. By early evening, the deliveries are complete. The owner pays him. Marcus sits in his truck staring at the payment notification on his phone. The amount is small. He has earned more during a normal week at his job. But this money feels different. It did not come from his employer. It came from an idea he turned into action. For years, Marcus wondered whether he could build something. Now he has one tiny piece of evidence that says, maybe. And sometimes maybe is all you need to keep moving. He goes home and shows his wife. She smiles and says, so you got your first customer. Marcus almost corrects her. It was only one delivery. Only one small job. Then he stops himself. Why minimize it? A first step is supposed to be small. The first dollar a business earns may not change your financial life, but it changes your psychological life. It proves the door can open. The first mile you run may not make you an athlete. The first $1,000 you save may not make you wealthy. The first page you write may not make you an author. But each one creates evidence. Evidence creates belief. And belief backed by evidence is far stronger than empty motivation. Marcus writes the date in his notebook. Underneath it, he writes, first paid job. Then below that, now make it repeatable. Because one success is encouraging, but one success is not yet a system. And Marcus is beginning to understand that transforming your future is not about creating one lucky moment. It is about learning how to produce good results again and again and again. That sentence changes the way Marcus thinks about progress. Now make it repeatable. Because one good day can happen by accident. One customer can come from luck. One productive week can come from excitement. But a transformed future is not built on isolated moments. It is built on patterns. Marcus begins paying closer attention to what worked in that first job. The customer needed fast communication. The driver needed clear instructions. The delivery required constant updates. Nothing about the job was complicated by itself. The value came from reliability. That surprises Marcus. For years, he thought success would require some brilliant idea nobody else had considered. Now he begins to see something different. Sometimes people do not need brilliance. They need someone who does ordinary things unusually well. Answer the phone. Keep the promise. Show up on time. Communicate when something changes. Solve the problem instead of disappearing when it becomes uncomfortable. Those behaviors sound simple, but simple does not mean common. Marcus starts creating a basic system. When a customer contacts him, he records the details in the same format. Pickup location, delivery address, time window, driver information, customer contact, special instructions. He creates a checklist so he does not have to trust his memory. At first, it feels unnecessary. He only has a few jobs. But Andre tells him something that stays with him. Build the system before you desperately need the system. That lesson reaches far beyond business. A lot of people wait for life to become chaotic before creating structure. They start budgeting after they are deeply in debt. They start caring about sleep after exhaustion begins affecting everything. They organize their schedule only after they feel completely overwhelmed. But structure works best when it is built before the emergency. Imagine someone who wants to write a book. If they depend on finding inspiration every day, the book may take forever. But if they write from 7 to 7:45 every morning, 5 days a week, the process becomes less emotional. The system carries them on days when inspiration does not. Or imagine someone trying to save $10,000. If saving happens only when there is extra money at the end of the month, there may never be extra money. But if a transfer happens automatically every payday, the system begins protecting the goal. Goals tell you where you want to go. Systems decide whether you actually keep moving. Marcus understands this more deeply when his side work starts increasing. At first, he is thrilled. 2 small jobs become 4. 4 becomes 7. Then 1 week, everything collides. His regular job becomes unusually demanding. A driver is late. A customer keeps calling. Marcus forgets to confirm an address. Another delivery has to be rescheduled. He gets home exhausted and irritated. His wife looks at him and says, "You wanted the business, but you can't build it by destroying yourself." Marcus does not like hearing that, mostly because he knows she is right. This is another lesson goals teach you. More is not always better. More work is not automatically more progress. More hours are not useful if those hours make you careless. A goal should stretch you. It should not make you ignore every warning sign until your health, relationships, and judgment collapse. Marcus realizes he has been trying to prove something. He has been afraid that slowing down means he is not serious. So he has been saying yes to almost every opportunity, every customer, every request, every chance to earn a little more. But a business built entirely on saying yes to everything eventually becomes impossible to control. He needs boundaries. That feels strange. For years, Marcus thought success meant doing more. Now he begins learning that success can also mean deciding what not to do. He creates limits. Only a certain number of side jobs during the workweek. No customer calls during family dinner unless there is a genuine emergency. 1 evening each week with no business work at all. A fixed time for reviewing finances. A fixed time for contacting potential customers. At first, Marcus worries he is losing momentum. Instead, something unexpected happens. His work improves. He makes fewer mistakes. He becomes more present with his family. He starts thinking more clearly. This matters because your future is not improved by one goal if that goal destroys everything else you care about. A person can double their income and lose their health, build a company and lose their marriage, reach a career milestone and realize they have not had a meaningful conversation with their children in months. That is not transformation. That is trading one problem for another. Goals need priorities, but they also need perspective. Marcus begins reviewing his life every Sunday evening, not just the business. Everything. He asks himself, did I move the business forward? Did I save? Did I take care of my body? Was I present with my family? What did I learn? Where did I waste time? What needs adjustment? Those questions become a kind of compass. Sometimes they reveal things he does not want to admit. One Sunday, Marcus realizes he has spent almost all his extra time serving current customers and none building future relationships. Another week, He notices he has stopped exercising completely. The weekly review does not let small problems hide for 6 months. It catches them early. That is one of the most powerful habits you can build around any goal. Do not wait until December to discover that the year went in the wrong direction. Look every week. Correct every week. A ship can survive being slightly off course for an hour. But if nobody checks the direction for months, it can end up hundreds of miles away. Your life works the same way. Marcus is now almost 2 years into his 3-year goal. The business is still small. He still has his full-time job. He still does not know exactly how the final transition will happen. But the man sitting at the kitchen table today is not the man who sat there 2 years ago. He understands money differently. He understands customers differently. He understands his own habits differently. Most importantly, he has stopped thinking of the future as something he hopes will happen. He now sees it as something that can be built, measured, corrected, and protected. Then, one Thursday afternoon, Marcus receives a phone call that could change the entire timeline of his plan. A company he has never worked with before wants to talk. Not about one delivery. Not about one emergency job. They want to discuss ongoing work. And as Marcus listens to the opportunity, excitement rises in his chest. But so does fear. Because sometimes the next level does not arrive looking like a reward. Sometimes it arrives looking like a responsibility you are not sure you are ready to carry. Marcus almost says no. Not because the opportunity is bad. Because it is bigger than anything he has handled before. The company needs consistent delivery coordination every week. Multiple routes. Multiple drivers. Regular communication. Real responsibility. For 2 years, Marcus has been asking for growth. Now growth is standing in front of him asking a question. Are you ready to become the person you said you wanted to be? That is the part nobody tells you about goals. Sometimes reaching the next level is just as scary as failing. Failure threatens your confidence. Growth threatens your comfort. Marcus sits at the kitchen table that night with his wife. The same table where he first wrote his 3-year goal. He tells her everything. The opportunity. The workload. The risk. The possibility. Then he says, I don't know if I'm ready. She looks at him and asks, Were you ready when you started? Marcus smiles. No. Then why do you think you have to feel ready now? That question stays with him. Maybe readiness is not a feeling. Maybe readiness is preparation combined with courage. For 2 years, Marcus has been preparing. He has learned the numbers, built relationships, handled real customers, made mistakes, created systems, saved money, recovered from setbacks. He is not the same man who first wrote the goal. The opportunity looks intimidating because it is meant for the version of him he has been building. The next morning, Marcus calls the company back. He does not pretend to know everything. He asks questions. He listens. He negotiates carefully. And he accepts the opportunity. The next several months test him harder than anything before. There are early mornings, late phone calls, drivers who cancel, customers who change plans at the last minute. A week when Marcus wonders if he made a terrible mistake. But something is different now. He no longer treats difficulty as evidence that he chose the wrong direction. He treats difficulty as part of the work. That single change in mindset saves him again and again. A year earlier, one hard week might have made him question the entire dream. Now a hard week simply becomes a problem to solve. And this is where goals begin to transform more than your schedule. They transform your interpretation of life. A setback becomes feedback. A delay becomes adjustment. Fear becomes a signal that something matters. Discipline becomes self-respect. Patience becomes strength. Eventually, Marcus reaches the point where maintaining both his full-time job and the growing business is no longer realistic. He knows the decision is coming. For years, he imagined this moment as exciting. He thought he would walk into work feeling fearless. He thought freedom would feel like certainty. It does not. When the day comes, Marcus sits in his truck outside the warehouse before his shift. He looks at the building where he has worked for more than a decade. This place paid his bills, fed his family, taught him the industry, introduced him to people who helped shape his future. He realizes something important. You do not have to hate where you came from in order to move forward. Growth does not require disrespecting the old chapter. Sometimes you can be grateful for a place and still know it is time to leave it. Marcus takes a deep breath. Then he walks inside. A few weeks later, his last day arrives. There is no dramatic movie scene. A few coworkers shake his hand. Someone brings cake. His manager wishes him luck. Marcus carries a small box of personal things to his truck. He places it on the passenger seat. Then he just sits there. For a moment, he remembers the night his son asked, "Why didn't you do it?" Marcus closes his eyes. 11 years of someday. Then one morning with a notebook. One decision. One savings account. One mentor. One rejection. One customer. One adjustment after another. He starts laughing. Not because everything worked perfectly. Because nothing worked perfectly. And yet he is here. That is what you need to understand about your own future. You do not need a flawless plan. You need a direction strong enough to keep bringing you back after life pushes you off course. A few months later, Marcus is driving home after a long day. His company is not huge. He is not rich. There are still bills. Still uncertainty. Still goals sitting in his notebook waiting for work. But he feels something he had not felt in years. Ownership. Not ownership of a company. Ownership of his direction. He knows now that a future does not simply appear. It is built, one decision at a time. And maybe your story looks nothing like Marcus's. Maybe you do not want a business. Maybe your goal is to finish school, get out of debt, repair your health, buy your first home, change careers, create something, travel somewhere you have dreamed about for years, become a better parent, rebuild after a difficult season. The goal itself can be different. The principle is the same. If you do not choose a direction, life will choose one for you. So take a piece of paper tonight. Write down what you want the next 3 years of your life to look like. Do not write what sounds impressive. Write what matters. Then choose one goal that would meaningfully change your future. Give it a date. Write why it matters. Break it down. What needs to happen this year? What needs to happen in the next 90 days? What can happen this week? And then ask the question Marcus had to ask at the beginning. What must I start doing now to become the person who can actually reach it? Do not wait until you feel fearless. You may never feel fearless. Do not wait until everybody supports you. They may not understand yet. Do not wait until the path is completely clear. It rarely is. Start with what you know. Use what you have. Learn what you do not know. Make the call. Send the application. Take the class. Save the money. Walk the mile. Write the page. Ask the question. Begin. Because 3 years from now, you are going to be somewhere. The calendar will keep moving whether you have a goal or not. The days will pass. The question is whether those days will build something you intentionally chose. Your future is not asking for perfection. It is asking for participation. So stop treating your dreams like things you will get around to someday. Put them on the calendar. Give them work. Give them discipline. Give them a chance. And one day, you may find yourself looking at a life that once existed only as a sentence in a notebook. When that day comes, you will understand that the greatest achievement was never just reaching the goal. It was becoming the person who could. If this message spoke to you, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who has been waiting too long to begin. And before you leave, write one goal in the comments that you are committing to. Not a wish. Not maybe someday. A decision. Because your future is already on its way. Make sure you are building something worth meeting.